Hey all my Facebook friends, this is your next video on, I don't know if you want to say just better relationships in general. I usually try not to get it too focused on, men doing one thing, women doing another, because everything can be kind of generalized. So what I'd like to cover on this video is the difference between somebody being internally motivated and somebody being externally motivated. So if somebody is internally motivated, that means they take all their cues, the things that motivate them to do things or motivate them to not do things, are all the clues and cues and emotions that are on the inside of them. The emotions that are coming from them, not their environment, not the people around them, but from them. So if somebody is highly internally motivated and they have the correct information, um, and they have a true workable plan, they'll probably be very successful because it'll be hard for other people to derail them because they don't take in exterior information as well. That's kind of what comes from inside. That's why in general most men are more internally motivated than externally motivated. Where on the flip side of that, most women are more externally motivated, which means they can read their environment better. They can, sometimes are in tune with their children better because they can take in information from their environment, from around them, and take that in. People are actually both. We're both internally and externally motivated. However, for people who are highly, I mean like highly externally motivated, you can fall into a category of, say, like codependency, where you're constantly trying to adjust who you are and what you do, and are you right or are you wrong, or is it a good day or a bad day by what's going on in your environment. Um, an extreme version of internally motivated, where you just can't take in external stimulus very well, would be, say, things like schizophrenia and autism, where it's all kind of whatever's going on the inside of them, but it's really hard for them to take in external information. So in general, women are more externally motivated, men are more internally motivated, but the goal is to have a balance of both, to be able to know what's going on inside of you, to be able to read your environment, and then for you to decide if you want to adjust to that environment or not, which would be a more balanced approach. So, and you'll find some men who are highly externally motivated, and you'll find some women who are highly internally motivated. So these are just generalities. But the way that you can tell is if somebody's externally motivated, if you ask them a question, they'll go, well, what do you think? Then you know they're looking for the information in their environment. Someone who is highly internally motivated, it would never cross their mind to ask you for your opinion because they already know what they're going to do. They already know their cues from inside, and they already know what their game plan is. And they're probably not going to tell you, because for someone who's highly internally motivated, they're really not going to tell people their plans because they don't want anybody foiling their plans. So it's just a different way that people either can read their environment or not read their environment. Neither one is good or bad. However, people who are highly externally motivated do have a tendency to stay loyal in situations where loyalty has either never been earned or has been proven that the other person really doesn't deserve the person's loyalty because they've either done inappropriate things or they've let you down, broken promises, stole from you, whatever. So they have a tendency sometimes to trust people they shouldn't, when people are externally motivated, because they're not as aware of what's going on inside of them. So they go from, what's outside of them. Now, if somebody is highly internally motivated, the best way to interact with those people are to ask them questions that guide them in the direction you're wanting to go. And these are people, it's pretty hard to manipulate them because they're internally motivated. They're just going off of the cues that are inside of them. So they're the kind of people that if it's not their idea, they won't do it. That's why they say, a smart woman makes it the man's idea. And so there's some truth to that statement. Most men or people who are highly internally motivated, if it's their idea, they're on fire to get the project done. But if it's not their idea, it could be a little bit of a grind trying to get that person to accomplish those goals. So if someone's highly internally motivated, the best way and sometimes the only way to interact with them is to ask them questions, but not why. I tell people all the time to stop asking people why because it's just pointless. Um, People really need to be more focused on, are you getting the results you want instead of are you right? Many people will fight to their death to be right and then complain they're not getting the results that they're after. So especially for women and sometimes for men, as I tell them, do you want the results or do you want to be right? I personally, I'm after the results. I'm not always so much concerned about being right. Um, so that's just the difference between internal motivation and external motivation. So if you have a man who's highly internally motivated and a woman who is highly externally motivated, she's going to experience him as kind of gruff and insensitive, kind of harsh. You know, that kind of, her feelings will probably constantly be hurt because she's going to take everything personal. So just as a little highlight for both men and women, that women read a meaning into everything. Everything means something to a woman. I can't tell you how many times a woman has said, well, what did he mean by that? I said exactly what he said. So if a man says he's busy, he's probably busy. But what did he mean by that? He means he's busy. And then women don't like the answer that I give, so they go off to their other girlfriend. Well, what did he mean by that? Well, you're never going to know because women don't think the same way that a man does. Whereas if you have a woman who's highly internally motivated and a man who's highly externally motivated, and they're out there, you'll have the same thing. He'll experience her as harsh, insensitive, demanding, all that kind of stuff. I have a sister who's more externally motivated and I'm more internally motivated, and I have to be very careful not to hurt her feelings. But what happens is internally motivated people, they're all about, getting it done and what's the next project and boom, boom, boom. And externally motivated people are more concerned about the experience. Is everybody having fun? What's the next event we can do? Let's do it all together. So it's great because my sister, who's highly externally motivated, she's making sure everybody has a good time, and I'm more internally motivated. I'm making sure we stay on schedule, we get the stuff done, and then I don't get swerved off the path of the plan. So that's just a little bit of information on internal and external motivation. Now, if somebody who is highly internally motivated runs into somebody who's highly externally motivated, that highly internally motivated person is going to think they're lazy and they're slow and like just make a decision. Like they're wishy-washy. That's going to be their experience of them. They may not really be that way. So depending on your motivation type will definitely depend on your satisfaction level within a relationship, especially when it comes down to conflict resolution. So I have a girlfriend where her and her husband, man, talk about the heated fights. Um, and that's fine. They're both highly internally motivated. They're both willing to stand their ground. They both want to be right, so they're not always concerned so much about the results. Where I'm much more on the externally motivated side. I might want to talk about it. What's our game plan? What's, our game plan? What are you going to do? What am I going to do? Next time it comes up, what are our agreements? We're going to cut some deals. And then we move forward and life goes on. It's pretty low drama. But if you have two people whose conflict resolution style is different, someone's always going to have to be sacrificing, and someone's probably always going to have their feelings hurt, which definitely does not lead to like a long-term relationship, because then resentments build, and before you know it, you're just mad all the time or upset or you're not connected, and it all just kind of rolls downhill from then. And then just to wrap up on this video, I do want to explain the difference between someone being extroverted or introverted. If somebody is introverted, they gather their power by being alone or in small groups, that kind of stuff. Extroverted people gather their power in groups. They like to hang around people. So like if I'm sick, throw me in bed, cover me up with a blanket, and ignore me. Maybe bring me food and a beverage every once in a while, but, don't talk to me. I'm not interested. However, I have a sister who's much more extroverted. If she's not feeling well or if she's stressed, she wants to be around people. She wants them over at the house. They're gonna go out and do, they're gonna go out and go hiking. They're gonna go do, they're gonna do a bunch of group stuff. I'm not interested. If I'm stressed or I'm not feeling well, I would like to be politely ignored. Um, because that's how I gather my strength more, smaller groups, independently, and she gathers her strength around groups and around people. So that's different than being internally or externally motivated, because the internal and external is about your motivation style and what motivates you. Does your environment motivate you, or does your internal environment motivate you to do or not do things? That's the difference. And then your extroverted and introverted is, where do you gather your power? Do you gather it in groups, or do you gather, by yourself? Just so that we have an understanding of those differences.